What many don't realize is that some of Hollywood's most iconic men quietly underwent some of the earliest and most disastrous hair transplants in history. Long before modern techniques evolved, these stars became guinea pigs for outdated procedures that left them with hairlines that were often more distracting than the baldness they were trying to cover. Here's a look at the most talked about hair transplant failures from Hollywood's golden age. Frank Sinatra was among the earliest major celebrities to undergo a hair transplant during the 1960s. He received the standard punch graft procedure of the time, which involved transplanting small circular patches of hair to the crown of his head. The result was visibly unnatural, plugs of hair that looked like doll bristles spaced across his scalp. Photographers had to use lighting tricks to conceal the circular plug pattern, which didn't match his natural hair texture. During a televised event in 1965, hot stage lights caused his hair to separate, exposing the transplant. His stylists scrambled to reapply hairspray and makeup between takes to keep the plug pattern hidden. Burt Reynolds also struggled with early transplant methods. His work began in the early 1970s and resulted in a hairline that appeared too straight and too low, creating a wig-like effect. The inconsistent density and unnatural growth patterns made his hair appear patchy. Reynolds later acknowledged that the procedure had been a mistake, and though he tried to fix it with more surgeries, each attempt left more scarring and damage. Despite his charismatic screen presence, his hair restoration efforts became an ongoing battle that plagued his image. Sammy Davis Jr. had a transplant in the late 1960s that left him with a thick, dense frontal patch that didn't blend with his naturally thinning sides. Though he tried styling it with pompadours and heavy hair products, under harsh stage lighting the plug pattern remained visible. In time, the procedures affected his remaining natural hair, and by the 1970s he resorted to combining transplants with extensions and combovers to maintain the illusion of volume. William Shatner began receiving transplants during his original Star Trek years. Plug technique left him with unnaturally thick rows of hair that failed to recede naturally with age. This disconnect between his aging facial features and frozen hairline became a subject of fan jokes. Plugs were placed too close together, resembling a brush more than real hair, and he was left with scars that prevented him from ever shaving his head. Tony Curtis underwent numerous hair transplants from the 1960s onward. His procedures created a cornrow-like pattern across his scalp, with the hair growing in straight lines rather than random, natural groupings. As Curtis aged, his transplanted hair remained dark and dense while the rest turned gray, resulting in a mismatched two-tone appearance. He began dyeing all of his hair for uniformity, which further amplified the artificial effect. Over the years, repeated surgeries left his scalp severely scarred. Mel Gibson is a later example, but his transplant echoes the issues seen in earlier stars. His hairline, following a transplant, appeared overly straight and dense, clashing with his age and facial features. Hair experts dubbed the outcome a forest fire pattern, areas of dense growth beside bald patches. It interfered with filming, requiring strategic lighting and camera placement to hide the inconsistencies. Ironically, his natural recession had previously enhanced his mature, rugged look. John Travolta began losing his signature thick hair in the 1980s and opted for a transplant. Procedure produced a sharply defined and overly symmetrical hairline that didn't mimic the irregularity of natural hairlines. The transplanted hair had a different texture and didn't blend well with his original hair, making the division between the two quite noticeable. High-definition cameras in the 1990s spotlighted these flaws, increasing media scrutiny. Elton John underwent hair transplants in the 1970s that left him with thin, uneven patches. Plug method used resulted in obvious circular hair groupings that grew in multiple directions and densities. Eventually, he abandoned further surgical solutions and embraced wigs and hairpieces, incorporating them into his stage persona and creating a signature style that worked in his favor. Sean Connery also tried to combat baldness with transplants in the early 1970s. His procedures left him with patchy results, different hair textures, and plug patterns that were especially visible in close-up shots. Ultimately, Connery abandoned the effort and embraced baldness. Ironically, this move enhanced his image, making him a Hollywood icon for aging with dignity and masculinity. Marlon Brando reportedly underwent several hair transplant procedures in the 1970s, though this was kept quiet for many years. The results were an unnaturally low and straight hairline, combined with random growth patterns and visible scarring. Makeup artists describe the transplanted areas as looking like grass sprouting from concrete. Brando relied on wigs and hats to conceal the damage, and he avoided being photographed without them. His natural balding would have suited many of his later roles, but the failed procedures created a lasting cosmetic burden. These cases were all products of the era's crude hair restoration technology. The standard method of punch grafting involved removing circular patches from the scalp and implanting them in balding areas. Unfortunately, these large plugs didn't mimic natural hair patterns or growth direction. The scars left behind, both at donor and transplant sites, were also extremely difficult to disguise. Beyond the physical consequences, the psychological toll on these actors was profound. Many became hyper-focused on fixing their hair, undergoing multiple corrective surgeries that only worsened the problem. In some cases, this led to anxiety, low self-esteem, and social withdrawal. The pressure to maintain their image affected both their personal and professional lives. The visible failures of these procedures sparked an entire industry dedicated to concealing bad transplants. Studios hired stylists, makeup artists, and lighting experts to hide scars and disguise plug patterns. Photographers became skilled in using angles and shadows to create flattering illusions in publicity shots. Ultimately, these celebrity setbacks prompted advances in the field of hair restoration. Surgeons recognized the importance of artistry, symmetry, and aging patterns in their techniques. New methods, such as follicular unit extraction (FUE), have since replaced plug grafting and produce far more natural-looking results. Today's hair transplants benefit from the lessons and missteps of Hollywood's earliest patients. These stars, despite enduring cosmetic setbacks, helped pave the way for a better understanding of aesthetic procedures. In many cases, they proved that confidence, not hair, is what truly defines presence.